At the end of the last episode, I took you on a walk across the beautiful Harthill Moor. As we learned, though its woods and meadows are littered with ancient remains, they are just fragments of a very different landscape. In this episode, we shall be exploring those ancient landscapes and the earliest people who inhabited them. But before that, let us continue our journey from Harthill Moor to uncover some of the amazing wildlife that would have lived with our ancestors during high summer. One creature we have not seen earlier in the year is the lizard. Small, fast-moving and up to 15 centimetres long, the common lizard is usually away as quickly as it is spotted. I found this one sunbathing on a large log. If it were a little later in the day, he would have been off in a flash, but early on they need to absorb the sun until their cold-blooded body has warmed up to at least 30 degrees. When he's away, he will be looking for insects, earthworms and snails, which are stunned before being swallowed whole. Sadly, although named the common lizard, numbers have decreased dramatically in the last few decades due to a loss of the wild places they thrive in. Also cold-blooded, the adder is Britain's only poisonous snake. It is very distinctive with its black zigzag pattern overlying its grey-brown body. Most people never see one, as the adder, sensing vibrations nearby, usually slinks off into the undergrowth. The adder is found all over Britain and is capable of surviving very harsh conditions, usually going into hibernation over the winter months. They can grow up to 90 centimetres long and will eat anything it can catch, usually small voles and mice. Voles and mice are the favourite food of another hunter, which appears like a spectre over the meadows and fields as the sun begins to set. The barn owl, with its banshee-like screeching call and heart-shaped face, is Britain's most distinctive owl. I saw this one hunting over the low pastures around the village of Meerbrook. The barn owl loves open areas to hunt for its prey, and also for its favourite breeding locality, barns and outbuildings, though originally it would have nested in hollow trees. Sadly, the UK population is now down to around 4,000 breeding pairs, and so far fewer people get to observe its silent, ghostly appearances during the summer evenings. The barn owl has a very grim reputation in English folklore. It is the likely inspiration for the legends of Will o' the Wisp, a white spectre who silently appeared from nowhere to spirit away lost and lonely travellers. The barn owl is also frequently associated with witches and warlocks, appearing as their familiars in legend. In one part of Britain, a rather macabre tradition existed that if you nailed a barn owl to your door, it would protect you from evil spirits. This barn owl is very active, having young to feed in a nearby farm building. This grainy film shows her returning to her nest a great distance away in an old field barn. The little owl is Britain's smallest owl, standing at just 8 inches and with a wingspan of 22. They were present in Britain before the last ice age, but then did not recolonise until the helping hand of man reintroduced them to the country, where they have since thrived. The popular image of the wise old owl goes back to Athene, Greek goddess of wisdom. She always had a little owl perched on her shoulder. The little owl may be doing well, but several other owl species are now seriously endangered. The short-eared owl, a nomadic and wide-flying species, is down to less than 2,000 breeding pairs. The body plumage is brown and spotted, with its yellow face and black patches giving it a somewhat cross expression closer up. In the 19th century, the main populations were in the uplands of Britain, but the first half of the 20th century saw their numbers rapidly decline with the reduction in grazing of upland pastures and the planting of extensive coniferous plantations. The short-eared owl nests on the ground, usually in a hollow between the heather. The females make a scrape which she lines with nearby vegetation. Like the barn owl, they hunt for small mammals, but also feed on large insects and moths which are bountiful on the high ground. I was incredibly lucky one evening whilst on the moors near to Leek to take these beautiful pictures of a short-eared owl. The light evening winds are rustling its feathers, and the glow of the last light creates a halo around its wings. This final picture was taken as the owl flew off into the blood-red sunset. Equally endangered and far less frequent in the Peak District is the long-eared owl. It used to breed at Gib Tor near Buxton, but the majority of its conifers felled in the last few years, the birds have sadly disappeared. Its ears are not in fact ears at all, but long tufts of hair. Like other owls, its ears are well hidden on the side of its head. This footage was filmed in 2004 as the female left her forest nest and headed out on the heather-clad moors for an evening's hunt. Long-eared owls do not make their own nests, but use those abandoned by other birds such as carrion crows. She has an awareness of a large area of land around her, and instantly spots me in the distance, disappearing over a nearby gritstone outcrop. During the day, amongst the flower-rich meadows, those other winged beauties, the butterflies, are still in flight, though late summer brings us a host of new species. Some, like the Red Admiral, have migrated all the way from Africa to feed on our shores. Whereas the striking common blue is a native all the way, often seen resting and swaying on the tall grasses. The meadow brown is another grassland butterfly and is in fact the commonest of all butterfly species in Britain. Much more infrequent is the small copper, which rarely rests and flies at great speed between flower heads. The sulphurous brimstone is much larger and striking, and may in fact be the butter-coloured insect that gave all butterflies their name. The rarest and most celebrated late summer butterfly is the dark green fritillary. The limestone dales of the Peak District are one of the country's strongholds for this unusual butterfly. In the summer, other more powerful insects emerge. Take a walk along the river or relax next to your garden pond on a warm sunny day and you are likely to be rewarded with their sight. These are the dragonflies and damselflies, an incredibly ancient family dating back 325 million years to the Upper Carboniferous period. At this time, some of the dragonflies had a wingspan of over 2 feet. In Britain, they have a somewhat frightening reputation, with vernacular names including horse stinger, devil's warning needle and ear cutter. But they are perfectly harmless to us. In fact, their metallic and iridescent colours make these things of dramatic beauty. In his 1937 masterpiece, Down the River, the novelist H.E. Bates described his experience of watching dragonflies.
I saw once an endless procession just over an area of water lilies of small sapphire dragonflies, a continuous play of blue gulls over the snowy flowers above the sunglassy water. It was all confined in true dragonfly fashion to one small space. It was a continuous turning and returning, an endless darting, poising, striking and hovering, so swift that it was often lost in sunlight.
Dragonflies are beautifully adapted for flight. They have powerful muscles which direct their forewings independently and enable them great manoeuvrability and agility in the air. They can hover, glide, change direction in a split second and even fly backwards. Although in the same family, dragonflies and damselflies form two distinct groups. Dragonflies are large and robust, but damselflies are small and slender. Dragonflies rest with their wings held open, whereas damselflies rest with their wings closed against their bodies. Dragonflies have large eyes which are very close together and often touch. Damselflies' eyes are on either side of the head and never touch. All of the dragonflies have a complex and fascinating life story. They begin as an egg, which can be laid directly into the water or vegetation on the surface. This female dragonfly is ovipositing in the brackish waters of an upland flush. From the egg, a small, unassuming nymph hatches, but these little insects are voracious eating machines, catching and consuming anything smaller than they are, from water fleas and tadpoles to small fish. The nymph larva sheds its skin several times as it grows, and in some cases it may take many years to reach maturity. When fully grown, the nymph climbs out of the water onto a reed or stem and begins its metamorphosis. Shedding its final skin, an adult dragonfly emerges and over several hours pumps blood into its newly formed wings. This is the most dangerous part of a dragonfly's life. A quick breeze or passing pike could quickly put an end to it, but luckily most will make it and take to the skies. Dragonflies in flight are both powerful and manoeuvrable, attaining speeds of over 30 miles an hour in seconds. Little can overtake them. They use their fantastic eyesight to spy smaller prey insects, and going in for the kill hold their bristly legs in a basket shape to scoop up their target. Mating is again quite complex, and some of you may be lucky enough to spot it taking place. It can happen in the air or on the ground. Males use claspers at the end of their abdomen to grab females just behind the head. When ready, the female then curves her body forward so that her reproductive organs reach those of the male. This forms the heart position, which can be held for several hours depending on the species. They are perfectly capable of flying whilst copulating, as you can see from this pair I disturbed one early morning. Down by the waterside, you may also be lucky enough to see Ratty from Kenneth Grahame's classic book The Wind in the Willows. Not a rat at all, Ratty is a water vole, the most adorable little rodent with a rich coat and bear-like face, who never grows to more than 20 centimetres in length. A full-grown adult weighs no more than 300 grams. Water voles excavate extensive burrow systems into the banks of the clear and clean waterways they inhabit. They dig at various levels depending on the height of the water, and most of their chambers have emergency underwater exits in case danger threatens. Inside their chambers they weave nests and beds of reeds and sedges. In a day, a water vole will consume 80% of its body weight in lush bankside stems. Over 227 species of plant have so far been identified from their diet. It has also been found that their territory is usually no more than 100 metres in size. They have suffered greatly from the introduction of mink, poor water quality, and a series of bad winters which have resulted in a 70% mortality rate. Added onto this, over the past century, they have disappeared from 94% of their former sites.
Come along and on our way, and we will to the fields together. Take a pick and take a hoe, and we will go despite the weather, though the sower may be sad. Harvest time will make him glad. Come along and on our way, and to the fields all bright and green. Though the table empty lay, the brightest day is yet unseen. Though the sower may be sad, harvest time will make him glad. Come along and on our way, and to the fields your sickle bearing, for the corn is ripe today, so no more grain its scarlet wearing. Though the sower may be sad, harvest time will make him glad.
Late summer was a very important time for prehistoric man, and still is in our rural communities, for it is Lammas, more commonly known as harvest time. These are the days when the hay is cut, the crops are reaped, and the animals are brought down from the high ground to prepare for the shorter days ahead. In times gone by, people perceived the crops as the fruits of Mother Earth, and so for this reason, a wide variety of festivals and traditions emerged. One of the most fascinating is that of the corn dollies. Raymond Rush, who lives beside the Church of All Saints in Siddington, has kept the tradition going for over 50 years, and every October the walls of the magical wooden beam church are adorned with the most intricate of beauties. The tradition of corn dollies goes back a long way. The crops which grew in the farmers' fields were believed to have a spirit within it, and when harvested, the spirit was made homeless. For this reason, the last sheaf of corn was gathered from each field and used to make an intricate shape, so that it could overwinter in the farmer's house before being ploughed back into the first new furrow in the new spring. This would keep the spirits happy and ensure a healthy crop for the next year. At harvest time, both people and animals reap and gather the necessities needed to make it through the long, cold winter ahead.